Greens POV. Why would they run just because they saw me? It was absurd. It made no sense. After pulling such a great and trending video, they didn't gloat about it? My thoughts were them asking me about my journey home and asking if the triplets bathed me. Something like that. I had expected Jessica and Braden to laugh at me and tell me I deserved it. They were meant to snicker, laugh, and throw the shameful video around in my face. Running was never among my thoughts. It wasn't even the last thing I would ever think of. I had never thought of them running. Then I shook my head and looked behind me. Maybe I was just overreacting. Maybe there was someone behind me. I looked back to confirm if there was someone they had seen but saw no one. Then I concluded the person had probably left. Why was I always having extreme and absurd thoughts, like those girls would ever run from me? I had nothing to scare them with. Either way, I was happy they hadn't pranced around me, mocking me, because I didn't want that to ruin my day. Class was even weirder. They were all quiet, and they sneaked looks at me, and whenever I met their eyes, they'd turn around. After our homeroom teacher gave the word for the day and took attendance, he left the class, and I made to prepare for my next class, but everyone was silent. Something had definitely happened. Something was wrong. Not one person said a word to me. In fact, all through that day in class, the people who bullied me avoided me. Fran gave me hating looks and rolled her eyes whenever our eyes met, and everything just seemed off. I got home, and shortly, the triplets arrived home as well. They didn't say anything, but only acted normal. Even Ethan seemed to ignore the fact that we kissed. He gave normal orders like nothing had really happened between us, and I didn't even know whether he had told Caden or Reese about it. However, as the days passed by, I began to have the feeling that they might be the ones behind the whole school suddenly avoiding me. Not like they avoided me totally, though. When I passed in the hallways, they rolled their eyes at me and left. They still whispered about me, but when I came around, they left immediately and acted like they hadn't been whispering about me, but I already heard them. It continued for 2 weeks, and finally we were into February. The new talk was about Valentine. Do you know what that meant? It meant I had not been on the platform for 2 good weeks, and that was crazily impossible. Fatso Urine was always on the platform, engaged in some funny prank video. I really, really suspected the triplets, and I made up my mind to confront them and ask about it. I had told Ethan about not having anyone to back me up, and if he truly was the one backing me up, then I wasn't sure I wanted that. The bullying had stopped, but it made me look even cheaper than I had looked before. The occurrence that even made me sure they had something to do with it was when all my videos were suddenly taken off from the platform and from the students' social media without a trace. The videos were gone. Just like that. Now, why would my enemies take down videos of me that probably made them laugh when they were sad? It meant someone higher than them was behind it all. I went to the restroom, feeling a little ashamed. It was all becoming clear to me that the triplets really had something to do with it, and everyone's stares and whispers suddenly had meaning. They wanted to bully me, and because they couldn't, they hated me more. It was then that I realized if anyone were to rescue me from bullying, then I wanted it to be myself, and no one else. Were they pitying me? However, in the restroom stall, the door opened and 2 girls walked in. I was done using the water closet, but was forced to sit back when I heard the first girl's words. School's been so boring without that fatso on the platform. Of course, I wondered if I was the only who felt that. Valentine seems so boring. I keep expecting a video of her or something to come up to make us laugh, but nothing happens. The second girl replied. The tap was turned on and they continued to talk, probably washing their hands. There are rumors saying she cried to the triplets and that they scared the bullies away. You don't mean it. You serious? You don't hear the rumors? Think of it. Isn't it weird? All her videos suddenly disappear and no one is bullying her or making new videos of her. The bullies are all avoiding her and everyone has been whispering about it for the past 2 weeks. It does seem fishy, so is it really true she's sleeping with the triplets? If you asked me, I'd say no. No matter how the triplets feel pity for her because she's their maid or whatever, I doubt anyone wants that ball of fat riding them. I wonder if her private part isn't filled with meat. The both of them laughed at that comment, and I felt really bad. They might not even see the hole. The other commented, and they laughed again. Anyway, if I were a guy, I'd definitely feel disgusted sleeping with her. Like, there's no way in hell that's happening. Remember that night in Paris? The night where someone confessed that he wanted urine on his bed? Yeah, I do. I guess that guy would be just as disgusting as her. Definitely. Hey, that lip gloss is a little too much. Come on, let's go. It's too much. Wait, let me wipe a little off. Do that later. Their footsteps retreated, and the door opened and closed. I got up from the toilet seat and bit my lip. If the triplets thought they had made my life better, they were mistaken. It had become worse. Then people hadn't really hated me. They'd just been obsessed with someone like me to make them laugh. But after the dumpster incident, it had become real hate. Everyone was saying one thing or the other about me. I stepped out of the restroom and began to walk away, and just then, a text came in on my phone. It was from Ethan. I stared at it for a while, thinking and wondering if Ethan really did something to stop all the bullying. And by the time I got myself, 3 minutes had passed. I opened it and was, however, taken aback by the text. You don't have a date for Valentine, do you? Do you want to go with me? Urine's POV. I didn't even know what to make of that. I just kept on staring at the words. Ethan was asking me out for Valentine? Why? Why was he asking me out for Valentine? Different thoughts went through my brain, and I found myself imagining what it would be like to go to the Valentine party with Ethan. But that was getting too much exposure, an exposure I didn't need. If I went to the Valentine party the students were planning with Ethan as my date, I would be the target of more rumors. I thought hard about it. Even though I didn't want more eyes on me, I didn't want to say no to Ethan. A guy like Ethan asking to be your date wasn't something you came by every day. It also made me question if he wanted to be my date because he was thinking it would make people respect me. It was sensible that he'd think that way, but it really wasn't as simple as that. I was a person who didn't have respect from the start, so it definitely wasn't going to earn me any respect. They'd only label me as an attention seeker and think I was being shameless, a slave going on a date with the master. That didn't sound very cool. Already, the words of the girls in the toilet had hurt so bad. What if more of those statements came in? I really wanted to tell Ethan I'd go with him, but I was torn between decisions. Being ridiculed wasn't that easy to endure as I made it seem. I clicked on the typing box and typed in my reply. Yes, I would like to go with you. I replied and sent it. It would make me very happy to go with Ethan, and I was sure he would not make me feel bad like Caden had done during Halloween. Caden had insisted on me being perfect, but I couldn't see Ethan doing that. He was just not the type to do such. I took my things with me for my next class, where we were being taught a little about psychology in biology class. The brain is such a complex. The teacher droned on. Can you lend me your spare pen? A girl suddenly asked me. I was shocked, but immediately handed out a spare pen on my desk, only for someone else to stretch out another spare pen at the same time. I wasn't asking you, the girl said to me coldly, taking the pen from the other girl. Thank you, Sarah. I felt a little humiliated and dropped my spare pen, trying to act like nothing embarrassing had happened. The way we think is something very challenging to discover, but thanks to research on the psychology and states of the mind, we've been able to point out certain of our behaviors that correspond to situations. A hand shot up in the air in front of me, and the teacher stopped. Yes, Claire. He approved of her asking for permission to ask a question. She stood up confidently and began to ask her question. What would you think is going on in the mind of males who decide to take the side of a girl who's despised by everyone? A girl no one likes. An ugly one with whom they have nothing in common, she asked, and I bit my lip hard. Everyone giggled, wanting to hear the teacher's reply, but the unsuspecting teacher placed a finger on his chin. I would say it's the alpha instinct. There's something called the mother instinct in females. It surges up when they feel the need to care, guide, and protect someone helpless. Men also have that, and in the case you mentioned, since she's such an unwanted girl, those feelings could arise out of pity. They want to protect and shield the girl because they feel compelled to. That is simply an outstanding fact of the male psychology," he explained, and smiling looks were discreetly thrown my way. "I hope I have managed to answer your question, Claire." "Well, yes, you did. Although I thought maybe they would be faking it, but I guess pity is worse than faking it. I would never let anyone pity me," she replied, shaking her head, and it wasn't her words that made me feel bad. It was because I began to wonder if Ethan didn't like me, but was only pitying me. How could a guy like him not have a date? He knew I didn't have a date, and offered himself because he knew I didn't have one. I didn't want that. I didn't want him to be inconvenienced because of me. After school that day, I went home immediately, made lunch for the triplets, and waited patiently for them to arrive. Finally, after about 45 minutes, I heard Reese and Caden laughing as they arrived. "No, I told her flatly that she was too ugly to be held on my arm," Reese bellowed, laughing. "That's still cool. I told Rosie her nose was far too fat for my liking, and I didn't want disfigured and imperfect people," Caden replied, and he and Reese laughed. "But Rosie's really beautiful," I heard Ethan chip in as they walked into the hall. Why would guys like that want to have anything to do with someone like me? It only pointed out the fact that they were really pitying me. But then I needed to ask them what was weighing on my mind first. They finally walked in and saw me. My heart began to beat faster, and I got up from the chair. I made lunch." "Whoa, this looks nice," Caden said, moving to sit at the table. "The salad is chilled, guys," he said, dropping his bag as he stuffed salad into his mouth with a fork. Reese took off his bag and threw it to the floor, and went to join Caden. Ethan locked eyes with me, and I looked away before going to him and offering to take his bag. He gave it to me willingly and went to take his seat. Then I picked up Reese's and Caden's bag from the floor. I started. These lobsters are quite nice," Reese muttered, munching quite noisily. I decided to leave, not knowing how to begin. "You wanted to say something," Caden suddenly said, and I stopped. It was better I asked them, or I might never bring myself to, "Did you guys say something to the girls at school?" I asked, and the expressions on their faces changed. It wasn't exactly a good one, and it had me thinking if I had asked a wrong question, Yireen's Povee. They continued to look at me until Ethan spoke up. "Talk to the girls?" he asked, going back to the fish pie I had made. "About what?" Caden asked, intent on finishing the salad. "Which girls?" Reese added, attacking the pasta none of them had touched moments ago. The girls at school, Jessica, Fran, those girls who bullied me and threw me into the dumpster, I explained, holding on to the bags tightly. First off, those girls had their faces blurred. Ethan pointed out, but I wasn't having it. It's very easy for you to find out their identities. You only need to ask around. No one would tell you lies or something. I stressed out. "So, you're trying to say we found your bullies and talked to them? About what exactly?" Caden asked, joining Reese to take portions of pasta into his bowl. "No one bullies me anymore. All videos of me have been taken down, and they avoid my eye. They avoid me. They don't talk to me anymore. And it's totally off and unusual," I spat out, getting frustrated because it seemed to me that they were acting. "First off, isn't that a good thing? Secondly, why would you think we would get your bullies off your back?" Reese asked, and I looked at them all. It didn't seem like they were ready to admit they had warned off all my enemies because they had pitied me. I'm sorry I bothered you. I'll just go and drop these," I said, then left the dining room to climb the stairs. That evening, Ethan came to my room, and I was a little shocked. "Am I just going to stand outside?" he asked, raising a brow, and I immediately moved back, letting him in. He looked around briefly, then sat on the bed. "Sit," he told me, patting a space next to him on the bed. I linked my hands together, then went to sit on the bed, although I didn't sit on the part he had patted. Instead, I made sure there were lots of space between us. "So, you replied to my message," he started, and I nodded slowly. "But may I ask you something? I mean, rather, can I tell you something?" I asked, looking at him, and he nodded. "Sure. You don't have to do this," I blurted out, giving an awkward smile. "Do what?" "I mean, ask me out." "Why do you think I asked you out?" "That's the point. I don't want you to pity me in any way. You don't have to cause yourself inconvenience because you're feeling bad for me." "I'm not feeling bad for you." "Yeah," I replied with just a tiny hint of sarcasm. I wanted to go to Valentine with you. He stressed those words out, but there was just no way I could bring myself to think he wasn't pitying me. Well, thank you. I indeed didn't have a date, and wouldn't have had one anyway. Actually, I wasn't planning on going. I actually don't have a reason to go. Now you do. And also, you're welcome, he replied, and I bit my lip in a smile. Then I smiled at him, remembering our kiss. The next day at school, everyone was buzzing about Valentine, and I wanted to disappear amidst all the ruckus. Girls moved in packs, expecting the guys to ask them out, and I was like the only girl who walked alone. Fran, Jessica, and some other girls hung out together, and Brayden was busy boasting to everyone how Jessica was the perfect girlfriend. He also made mention of how he no longer had to deal with deformed girlfriends. Everyone laughed, and even though his words were not shouting out my name, everyone knew he was talking about me. During break, I hung out alone in a corner of the field, drinking strawberry milk and watching everyone act crazy. The guys were busy holding contests on whose claws were longer and whose eyes were brighter to ask the girls out. They even held a fighting contest. Whoever won had the right to ask the girls out first. They were fun to watch, but maybe I shouldn't have watched because in little time, they seemed to develop the urge to say mean things to me. I have a date! A girl suddenly screamed, and everyone laughed. It seemed they were already connected enough in their minds for them to know she was referring to the comment I made that had gone viral in October of the previous year. Maybe she'll show up with Reese this year. A guy boldly commented, and everyone looked around frantically before hitting him angrily. During PE, they all continued to whisper about me, wondering which of the triplets I'd show up with. It burned because I was indeed going to show up with one of them, and was going to make them start confirming the stupid rumors they started about me, pleading to the triplets to be their date because I was pathetic. All right, we're doing sit-ups. I'll be picking partners, okay? The PE teacher announced and began to pair us up together. Against my expectations, Francesca and I were paired together, and she rolled her eyes and walked over to me. The class giggled, and she groaned in dissatisfaction. Not long after we were all paired up, we started our sit-ups while the teacher walked around, lecturing, telling us the importance of sit-ups, the effects, and correcting the people who did it wrongly. Must be having the time of your life, huh? She scoffed, with her hands behind her head. You look displeased. What? Is it the statement I made? You're going to tell on me to your protectors, she asked, sneering, and I tried to ignore, but couldn't. Who are the protectors? I asked, and she chuckled. You're something else. I never expected you to go this low. You should solve your problems, Irini, not let other people solve them for you. It was lame to cry to the triplets to fight for you. She spat, staring at me with disgust, and I stopped holding her. She didn't speak like it was a rumor. Definitely, the triplets had visited her with threats. They made me look lame and pathetic, yet they had denied it. It made me very mad. Yirine's Po V. I sat on my bed in my room. The fan was cool and at its highest, but my sweat was still pouring buckets. The room seemed to be on fire, and I couldn't bring myself to think. What had happened? I had had sex with the triplets, all three of them together. It was something that had never happened in all my life. I had never even dreamt of such. My body burned with the touch of three hands, and I was unable to deny wanting it. It was bliss. Irini, I called, placing my hands over my ears, trying to stop hearing the sound of my own moans. It had been so hard to stop myself, to contain the excitement and pleasure I had felt. Something totally new had happened to me, and I was still feeling all tingly about it. Had any girl in school ever had three of them together? I didn't think so. If anyone knew, they would call me a slut, but I didn't exactly care about it. I had not gone to them with mini skirts, batting my eyelashes, and skimming my tongue over my lips. They had done it willingly. How were things going to be? Things were really going to be awkward from that moment on. How was I supposed to face them? There was just no way I was going to be able to look at them the same way again. Caden and Reese, who I had thought were always disgusted with me, actually slept with me too. It was just so mind-blowing that I couldn't stop thinking about it. This can't go on, I told myself. Getting up from my bed and bursting into my bathroom, I took a long shower, dressed up quickly, and left the house to see my mum. Seeing her always made me calm, and if there was anything I needed at the moment, it was to be calm. My fingers were already trembling hard, like I did something wrong, and I kept swallowing hard. As I made my way to the hospital in a cab, my head was filled with images of our sexcapade, and each time, it became harder to believe it had actually happened. I felt like screaming out loud just to clear my head, which was buzzing with thoughts. Finally, I got to the hospital and went straight to my mum's ward. She was eating a bowl of fruit, and a pretty nurse was talking to her, making her laugh. "Oh, your daughter is here." The nurse squealed when I walked in, and my mum turned. Her face broke into a bright smile when she saw me, and I felt so happy seeing her also happy. "Why do you always come when I'm about to be put to sleep?" she asked, and I chuckled. "It's fine. You're going to be put to sleep when you're done with your fruits?" I asked, pointing to the fruits, and she nodded with a smile. Then she put out her hand to take a strawberry, and I saw it was shaking hard. "You really need some sleep," I muttered, and she grinned. "Oh, it's nothing," she replied, holding the strawberry to my mouth, and as I ate, I saw the look on the nurse's face. It was a look I likened to sadness and pity. "My baby," my mother said, holding my cheek, and her hands trembled as she did. "Mum, are you okay?" I asked. "I'm clearly fine," she replied, looking at herself. "I think you really need some sleep. You'll eat the fruits later," I said, taking the fruits off her lap. "Ureni, come on," she said, giving me something that looked like a pout, and I laughed. "It's my turn to get really bossy. It's time for bed," I said, trying to sound like her, and she burst out laughing. When last had my mother laughed out loud that way? I couldn't remember. There was just something entirely different about her. She seemed brighter, which was a bit odd, but I couldn't help liking it. The nurse assisted my mum in laying straight on the bed, and then I and my mum watched each other as she was given the shot. In about a minute, her weak body was overwhelmed by the shot, and she began to close her eyes. I exited her ward and waited for the nurse to come out. "How's she?" I asked her, and she gave a sigh. "I think you should see her doctor," she replied, stretching out her hand slightly, and my heart sank. I was taken to see my mother's doctor, and when she saw me, there was a sad smile on her face. "Hello, Ureni," she greeted with that sad smile. "Hello, Dr. Christine," I returned, and she offered me a seat. "How's my mother?" I asked, and she gave a deep and horrible sigh. "I must tell you, your mother is not getting any better. She is getting worse." "But recently I was told she was getting better." "Yes, indeed. That was what we thought, but a week ago she suddenly stopped responding to the treatment we've been given her. She'll be needing something more treatment and proper hospitalization. That is where the hard part lays. It would cost more money. She's really not in a good state right now." Dr. Christine explained, and my eyes prickled with tears. Does she know?" "Yes, dear. She is aware. She didn't want you to know, but I had to tell you," she answered, and I burst into tears. The tears had magically sprung up to my face. When it came to my mother, water always exploded from my tear glands. I had cried all night, and the next morning, even the triplets noticed it. I was so dull when they probably expected me to be bright and blushing. "Okay, what's wrong?" Reese asked, slamming his fork into the table in frustration, minutes into the really awkward breakfast. I was shaken, but answered him nevertheless. It's nothing. It's just my mother. She's getting worse. She needs higher treatment, and I think I need to find a ton of part-time jobs," I said, without looking at him, playing with green beans absent-mindedly with my fork. They were silent for a while until Caden broke the silence with something that left me stunned. "We can help your mother. Money is what is needed, right? Well, we'll do that only if you sign a contract with us," he had said, and I looked up. Another contract? What was it this time? "It's different this time. We'll pay for your mother's expenses on the condition that you'll have sex with us continuously." He finished, and my mouth dropped open. Urene's pavie. I stared at Caden, open-mouthed and unable to say a word. Did he say the right word he intended to say? They wanted to continue having sex with me? I had thought that would be a one-time thing, but they wanted it to continue happening? Like steady sex? Did they all want that? My gaze switched to Reese, who had a pleased look on his face, then Ethan, who kept on eating without saying a word. I mean, why would you want to continue having sex with me? I'm fat, I pointed out, bringing out the last two words in a whisper, and Ethan actually chuckled. Remember that confession note? The one about someone wanting you in their bed? Reese suddenly asked. That someone was me, he completed, and my jaw dropped. A few days later, I gazed at the lovely red dress Ethan had gotten me. It had a corset for my flabby and outpouring stomach and just a single sleeveless arm. It also flared at the chunks of meat which were supposed to be my hips. Then it had gems on the arm, chest, waist, and hem. Simple, but extremely beautiful. I guess you're curious about what I said to the triplets. Well, I said yes. First, I was really desperate. Seeing my mother's hands tremble so bad made me seriously scared, and it had been the worst feeling in the world. Second, sex with the triplets wasn't so bad. It was a shameful act, I know, but it was what I had to do. I'd rather lose my dignity with them than lose my mother, and even though Caden and Reese were jerks sometimes, all three of them knew how to keep a secret. We hadn't had sex since then, but I knew it was coming soon. I could feel it. Valentine came quickly, and I wowed everyone with my look, and most especially with Ethan on my arm. Everyone was stunned, and even though they had expected me to show up with one of them, they hadn't really expected me to show up to the party at all. You know, that kind of stuff. They were kind of mocking me, thinking I lucked out with Caden on Halloween. But the best part was Caden and Reese picking girls from other schools. It made it feel like no other girl in the school could match me when it came to them. Valentine was quite boring. All they did was dance and play horny games, none of which I or Ethan were interested in. He was a total gentleman all through the night, and that night we talked a lot. I discovered more interesting sides to Ethan, and I couldn't help getting mesmerized by his smile whenever he flashed it. Why didn't he smile more? Long before the night was over, Ethan and I had escaped the party to have our own special Valentine. We watched a movie, and I had never seen Ethan laugh so hard. Thereafter, we went to the park, rode a Ferris wheel, jumped on a trampoline even though he hadn't wanted to. And we had screamed our lungs out on the fastest roller coaster they had. It had felt like we were dating, and as we walked back home, we kept on talking about our day. He suddenly seemed more free with me. I never knew your voice was as loud as that. He teased, and I laughed. No way. Yours was even louder, I retorted, and he turned red, which made me laugh even harder. When we got home, we watched another movie and prepared dinner together before Reese and Caden came home totally wasted. That night, we all had sex all through, and it had been screams of pleasure bursting through my lungs. The next day, I realized I had gained more haters, but I was no longer bothered. I preferred the triplets and my mother over the school. For weeks, the triplets and I kept on having sexcapades, although they reminded me every time that it was just sex without strings, and that was fine with me. They demanded me everywhere, and I was shocked that I became someone who had tried sex almost everywhere, and of course the naughty ones behind that were Caden and Reese. We had once had sex in a parking lot, and that was because Reese had started it. The scariest time had been when Reese had dragged me off into an empty classroom, and we all had sex there after closing hours when students were bursting out of classes, preparing to go home. Although it hadn't really been sex, all they did had been fingering, really, and other kinds of oral sex. It was so hard to keep my noises down, and the worst part was that the door to the classroom we were in was broken, so anyone could enter. Someone's coming, Ethan suddenly said, and the three of them scrambled, trying to look normal, as they walked to the door. I also straightened my gown and placed my books on the table immediately. They got to the door, and Fran opened it just as Caden was about to. She blinked in shock, looked at me, then at them. The only hint of anything nasty happening was my sweat and irregular breathing, and I knew she had probably caught on. The boys left, and Fran walked in. She bent under a desk, took out a book, and before leaving, gave me a dirty look and shook her head. Dirty slut, she spat. You think they'll stay? No. They're all gonna leave, and maybe then you'll finally feel like the trash you are. She spat and left. I ran my hands through my hair and took in a deep breath. She wasn't the one who had a sick and dying mother. She wasn't the one who had to fend for herself. And also, I didn't believe the brothers would leave me because even if they called it just sex every time, we had gone too far. They had definitely become attached, and proof was Caden getting overly jealous when a man touched me and tried to lure me into paying to work out in his gym. He had told me not to let any other man touch me, and I had smiled, so they definitely weren't leaving me. Not with what I was seeing in them. Just then, my phone chimed, and I took it up. There was a post about me, something I hadn't seen in ages. Confirmed you're fucking the triplets. Ask her, and if she denies, call me a bitch. The post had been uploaded just a minute ago, but it already had 500 comments and was still counting. How many damn people were scrolling through the platform? Didn't they all have stuff to do? Reen's Poe. I had thought it could not get any worse, but oh, I was so wrong. It wasn't about the kids bullying me. That had stopped a long time ago, but they all made life harder for me by looking at me with disgust. Staring at someone with hate was one thing, but when the hate turned to disgust, it was hard not to feel embarrassed. Damn, you're something, girl. You do all the disgusting things in the world. A guy commented as he walked past me with his friends. Just look at her. She probably thinks she's a celebrity now. How could you sell your body and fuck 3 guys in a classroom? I heard a girl say to her friend as they kept their books in their lockers. Damn, that is down disgusting. The triplets are using her as their plaything. They'll never share their girlfriends. Fran hadn't even seen us, yet she had gone ahead and told the whole school we had had sex in the classroom. It was humiliating. Are you really having sex with all 3 triplets? A girl suddenly walked up to me, asking, and my mouth was as heavy as lead. It couldn't seem to open up. I just kept on blinking like a fool. The person who uploaded the post is right. She can't even deny it. A girl whispered, and everyone began to talk about it in a frenzy. When I passed in the hallways, they acted like I was contagious, but these same girls threw themselves shamelessly at the triplets, saying stuff like, if they'd sleep with Urine who's worth a penny, then why wouldn't they sleep with me who's worth dollars? It was humiliating, but it was all gearing me up to find my change. Another school had been opened up, and the principal had been given a huge promotion, so he had decided to give students a full mouth for Easter. All we had in the curriculum for April was 2 weeks of learning anyway, so we rushed it up in March, using up free periods, and having extra classes after school. The students all loved the idea as a whole month away from school, when it wasn't even something as huge as the summer break, was tempting. I also had a plan for myself. When April came and the school had the beautiful Easter break, I found myself on my way to the gym. The man who had tried to lure me into his gym had offered me a discount, and I was ready to take it. My motivation was so the kids at school would never be able to call me fat and ugly. I was going to return from the Easter break renewed. I told the triplets I was going to stay with some relatives for the Easter break, and they granted me permission. Every day I slept at my old house. I went on a total and complete diet, watching the things I ate, and although it was hard, I tried my best. Ignoring beef and junks were the hardest challenge. They weren't even as hard as the exercise. Whenever I ran around the neighborhood in the mornings, I always thought of Fran, Jessica, and everyone in the school. And I was fired up. I also engaged in a little bit of boxing and did all kinds of exercising to burn my fat. Every day, I burned carbs like water and made veggies my favorite food. I became a calorie-crazy monster whenever I went to get groceries. Anything with too many calories, I ran from them and grumbled, and each day looking into the mirror alone was a miracle. As the month wore on and everyone talked about me on the platform, waiting for school to commence, my clothes got bigger and bigger for me. And on the last day of the month, I wore my clothes, and they were baggy on me. Sure, I was a little plump at the cheeks, but the most beautiful thing were my hips, which I was seeing probably for the first time in all my life. I hadn't even noticed it when I had been losing weight and doing all that. I was a totally different person. I stared into the mirror for hours, amazed yet horrified about my transformation. It had been a month of sweat and tears, and wishing I could suddenly grab a bag of chips and eat to my fill, wishing I could order pizza and gobble up the whole thing, wishing I could walk into Kentucky's and order nice chicken breasts. But I had survived. Every day in April, I had taken pictures of myself, and staring at them had me amazed. I was still even looking like a different person to myself. So different that I screamed when I checked myself in the mirror for the 100 and something time. Gosh! Is this me? I ran all around the house, trying to believe my lightness, my trimmed legs, and chubby instead of fat face. I wasn't totally slim, but no one could call me fat and ugly anymore. The beauty of my eyes had come out and had spread to my face, and I had never felt more beautiful. The fat Irene had suddenly lost all her weight. My change had found me in a single month. My determination, tears, and sweat had given me the body I always wanted. Somehow, I missed the oversized me. She didn't care what she ate, nor did she care what she wore. She was just there, laughing at the comic movies she watched and crying whenever she got bullied. It was a fresh start, and I was never going to let myself get bullied ever again. With the money I had earned from numerous part-time jobs which paid differently but generously weekly, daily, and monthly, I went to the shopping mall and got myself clothes. I bought as many clothes as I wanted and made sure I looked chic in them. Isn't this too hot? I asked myself as I looked at a black miniskirt. It's too hot, I won't buy it, I said, dropping the skirt, and the female employees giggled at my sense of humor. Here I am thinking every girl wants to look hot. The first one said, No, that's just too hot, I said, joining them in giggling. Finally, the day to go to school came and my heart was beating thunder. Oh God, oh God. Deep breaths, Irene. Yeah, there you go, I said to myself, taking in deep breaths, and then I walked into the school. At first, no one recognized me until a girl suddenly shouted, Damn it, Fatso Irene! She screamed, and I suddenly became the center of attention. I turned and looked at her, and screams broke the air. No one could believe it, but it was fine. I also couldn't believe myself anyway. Photos and videos played on, and I was finally feeling like a celebrity and not a weak girl taking the spotlight. Yes, my change had definitely arrived. Irene's Pov. Fingers were pointed at me, hands were covering mouths, and lips were moving fast, saying all kinds of words to show their surprise. I walked into the building to my locker and happened to run into Fran, Jessica, and Braden. They were just the 3 people I wanted to see. They both stopped in shock, staring at me from my head to my feet. I ignored them as usual and left for my locker. Irene? Jessica called, as if trying to confirm it was me. I didn't turn. Why was I to answer her? All because she called my name. I pulled open my locker and began to sort out my books while they stood there gaping at me. By the time I was done, jealousy, shock, disbelief, and fear had mixed into all their faces, and I left after glancing at them. I wasn't going to give them the attention they wanted from me. I no longer needed them in my life. Just as I had expected, the triplets didn't come to school that day. They were probably lazing at home all day, and Caden and Reese were definitely trying to drag Ethan into playing games with them. All day, people stared at me and the platform went crazy with photos of me. I had dressed in a pink, off-shouldered crop top that was as free as a skirt and light blue boyfriend jeans with sneakers, and that look was killing them all. When the day was over, I smiled to myself, walking home happily to see the triplets. They were bound to be surprised. My mum had been moved to a new facility and was receiving the treatments she required. Every time she saw me, she tried to feed me food with high calories, telling me I didn't need to change myself, but I was determined to be better. When I walked into the living room of the triplets, Reese was the first to react. "Who the hell are?" he started to say, but dropped the bowl of cornflakes he had been holding. "Holy shit!" he exclaimed, falling back. Ethan came out of the kitchen with a knife and an onion, about to throw the onion on Reese for shouting, but when he saw me, he dropped both knife and onion. And Caden, who was coming down the stairs, slipped and fell. "Irene?" Reese called, scanning me from my head to my toes, and I blushed. "I can help with whatever you're doing in the kitchen," I said, moving towards Ethan, and the brothers all watched me open-mouthed. I picked up the knife, an onion, and walked into the kitchen with my smile reaching my ears. The brothers were totally shocked, and all through the day they kept on staring at me, and I kept on blushing. You're beautiful," Caden said, like it was forced out of his mouth. He dropped his fork heavily on the table and left, which made me blush even harder. Will you please just stop smiling? Reese suddenly shouted, dropping his fork more aggressively than Caden had done, and left the table as well. I was speechless and ended up giving an amazed scoff. You really should stop smiling. It has a nasty effect, Ethan commented, digging his fork into the salad, and I wondered how I was to stop blushing when they were being so obvious that they were affected by me. The next day at school, the attention continued. I was basically under the spotlight. Hey, slut, the triplets you fuck every night told you to cut down on your fat? Braden suddenly shouted, and phones were up again, clicking madly. Actually, they did tell me to cut down on something, I replied, and the videos went on with murmuring. My pretty smile, I replied, giving him a smile, and I even dared to give him a wink before leaving. Whoa, my confidence was on another level. It seemed like I had burned my fear along with my layers of fat. A random guy had the guts to push his phone in my face, and I gave him the hardest glare of his life. He dropped the phone immediately and let me pass. I was going to stand up for myself from that moment on. The previous night, the triplets and I had discussed the contract. The triplets had said as long as our sexcapades were kept a secret, my mum would still be taken care of, and I didn't mind. Even if everyone pointed fingers at me calling me a slut, I would never give them what they wanted, which was me admitting it. I and the triplets hung out more in school, and I had totally changed. My fame was rising. And after about a week, Braden actually walked up to me while I was arranging my books in my locker, looking a little sour. Urine, he called, and I turned to him. What? I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Yesterday, I broke up with Jessica. So? I asked, shutting my locker. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry for everything. I've been a jerk. I really want to make things right. I want to properly apologize, and I hope you give me another chance to show you that I'm not really a jerk. I really thought hard on my actions, and I get it, I replied softly, and his eyes lit up in hope. I really hate tardiness, and it's just that you're 9 months late. That's quite a lot, isn't it? I asked, hardening my gaze after the soft words, and walked past him. You wouldn't believe that so many times Braden came up to me, buying snacks, food, and trying to drop gifts for me, shamelessly. It was totally unbearable. The only thing that made it bearable was the burning look of insane jealousy in Jessica's eyes. That served me quite well. And one day, after school hours, I got to know the extent of Jessica's jealousy. She had asked to meet in an alley a few buildings away from the school, since she had something to say. She also added that she didn't want the school placing cameras on us as we spoke. I agreed to meet with her, only for a couple of girls to come out from hidden places and surround me. They had nasty smiles on their faces and brought out their claws, flashing their eyes. They were going to attack me. Urine's pove. The girls all moved closer to me with their claws out, ready to strike. You must think you're quite the hot package now, I heard Jessica say, and she came out from a corner, staring at me with hatred burning in her eyes. Because you got all the attention, you forgot your place, and started acting out? You were probably happy that you made me jealous by stealing Braden away from me, but look where my jealousy has landed you. I don't care about you dying. You're just a flea to me anyway. Jessica spat, and with a signal, the girls all ran towards me. I might not have been able to use my claws, but I did not simply burn all my carbs to remain a weakling. I had engaged in boxing and had taken up all kinds of defense training. While they were all busy slacking off, eating pizza, taking photos, and posting shit about me on a platform during the 1-month break, I was busy training myself to fight back in situations like this. I was not going to let anyone cheat me. They all began to attack, and I took the lid of a bin, using it to defend myself. Being faster and lighter, I managed to dodge all their slashes and thrusts. Thanks to the fact that they had not been expecting me to be able to defend myself, I was able to use their shock against them. They were just 5. I could take them on. All they had were their claws. They'd never really trained on how to use them in combat. They thought showing their claws alone would scare me. But how wrong they were. I whacked the first one hard in the head, and she hit her head on a wall, falling down. Another pushed me in fear instead of using her claws, and I fell, bruising my knee and elbow. She charged at me, but I took hold of her leg and she fell. The other 3 covered me, scared to use their claws, but they kept on hitting me and rolling me in the dirt. But I didn't let that hold me down. I bit one hard on her breast and she screamed. The harder the others hit me, the harder I bit her, and she screamed in pain. "Let go of her! Damn you! Let go of her!" She shrieked, holding on to her breast and trying to push my head away. The girls let go of me hastily, and I bared my normal teeth at them, making them move backwards. "Gosh, she's insane. She's the mad lady of the pack. There's nothing she can do, but she bites like she ran crazy." One of them screamed, turned and ran, holding her wrist, which was bleeding. They all began to leave, and Jessica stared hard at me before turning away and leaving too. When I got home, dirty and bruised, I knew Jessica was in deep trouble because of the look in the triplets' eyes when I had told them who had made me so bruised and dirty. And just as I had expected, the next day the school was buzzing with yet another news. "What's wrong?" I asked a girl, and at first she looked shocked that I was talking to her. But she cleared her throat and pointed at Jessica. She and Braden's brother were attacked last night and suffered severe injuries. They had to be taken to the hospital. She told me, and I bit my lower lip. I didn't know the triplets would go that far to defend me, but it warmed my heart, and just then I realized that I was crossing my boundaries. I was falling for the brothers. That wasn't supposed to happen, because multiple times they had stressed the fact that it was just sex without strings, but I had gone ahead to attach strings that were directly attached to my heart. Just then, Jessica suddenly made her way to me and went down on her knees. "I'm sorry. Please ask them not to do it again. They weren't involved. Please, if you want me to leave, that's what I'll do," she cried, rubbing her hands together. So she had someone she loved, yet she trampled on someone else's loved one emotionlessly. "You should ask them." "I didn't ask them to do it, so I can't ask them to stop either. They won't listen to me," I told her and left. For the first time, Jessica was on the platform, and lots of comments were overflowing under her post, but most of them were negative. A few days later, Jessica transferred out of the school, and almost everyone suddenly wanted to be my friend, asking me for things, complimenting my dressing, and acting all nice because they knew I had the support of the triplets. "Where are you guys going?" I asked, one morning after I went to see the triplets in their class, only to see them packing up their bags. "Oh, Father called us out for an important meeting," Ethan replied. "Why? Will you miss us?" Reese asked, walking past me. "No," I replied, watching Caden drink water, and Reese scoffed. "We'll be back very soon," Ethan replied, zipping up his bag, and I nodded. "That's fine. Do you want me to prepare something before you get back? Are you taking your books with you?" I asked. "Of course. When everything gets too boring, we pretend there's a test going on in school, and we have to read." Caden replied, and Ethan smiled. "You mean you and Caden? I read for real," he replied, and Reese snorted. "Didn't you have the audacity to doze off the last time we had a sudden, out-of-the-blue meeting with Dad?" he asked, and all 3 of them laughed. All through the day at school, I waited for the triplets to return, but they didn't, and it had me distressed. Were they not returning that same day? After closing hours, I didn't even bother taking a cab. I walked home, hoping to meet them at home when I got back. And indeed, they were home when I got back. The living room TV was turned on. I burst into the living room happily, smiling. "I thought you..." I stopped. It wasn't the triplets, but some random girl. She looked at me, and for a while she looked confused before breaking into a wide smile. "Hi, I'm Eileen Peters." "Eileen? And who are you?" I asked, squinting my eyes at her. "I'm a childhood friend to the triplets. I'm here because I'm going to mate with them." Yurine's Pov. It seemed like a huge rock was dropped on my head. I couldn't understand what she was saying. She was going to mate with the brothers? Why would she mate with the brothers? Wait, did the brothers know about it? No, they couldn't know about it, right? Who was she to suddenly come and act like she could claim the brothers? The brothers wouldn't allow it, would they? It felt like a huge hand had suddenly found its way to my heart and was squeezing it hard. I was probably overthinking things, right? Yes, I was. I had a tendency to overthink things a lot. "Are you okay?" she asked, but I was unable to answer her. My eyes were stuck in space. It was suddenly becoming hard to breathe. Okay, may I ask who you are?" she asked, and my out-of-focus gaze snapped back to her. Oh, you must be the maid. Mr. God informed me all about you. I'm sorry, I expected a fat person. I'm sorry if I... It's fine, I replied breathily. She had suddenly reminded me of my place as a maid, and it was a little disheartening. The triplets had treated me like a woman, and not just a maid, so being reminded of who I really was disheartening. But are you okay? She asked once more, and I nodded immediately, although my eyes were restless in their sockets. Yes, I'm fine. So what would you like to drink? The triplets are not back yet, I replied, gesturing towards the kitchen. A cup of tea, fruit juice, wine. It's fine. I can get it myself. I'm not a guest, she said, and even her innocent words stung. She was their childhood friend. She knew the triplets longer than I had, so she was definitely not a guest. Just then, I heard the door opening. I'm hungry. Want some meatballs? Urine could make it for us. Reese's voice floated in from the hallway. Add tomato soup to that, Caden added, with garlic bread and steamed vegetables. Thinking about that, I'm craving mashed potatoes too, and some rice. Ethan suggested, and they laughed. Let's just have it all. Urine would make it. Reese said, then they emerged into the living room, and I found that I couldn't look them in the eye. They scanned the situation, and Eileen stared at them with a bright smile. Hey guys, it's been so long, she said, getting up from her seat. She went to Reese and Caden, threw her arms around their necks, and hugged them. Caden also placed an arm around her waist. Then she went to Ethan and gave him a full hug. Wow, you guys are even more handsome than in the pictures. She squealed and they laughed. I'll make some meatballs, I said awkwardly so I could leave their uncomfortable reunion. In the kitchen, I closed the door and leaned against the counter with a sigh. She couldn't really be mating with them. I had to ask the triplets. Let's just wait until we ask the triplets, I told myself, and began to bring out the ingredients I needed. As I made use of my ingredients, beginning to cook, I couldn't help but think of the way things would turn out. What if they were really mating with Eileen? What would happen to me? Would I be cast aside? Would they keep on having sex with me while they marked her as theirs? Stop thinking, I whispered to myself because it was so hard to stop thinking and I couldn't concentrate on the things I was doing. I prepared all the things the triplets wanted while they spoke with Eileen in the living room. Countless times, Eileen's bubbly laugh floated in the air, and I suddenly couldn't help feeling useless, feeling like I had overrated myself. I had thought too high of myself. After all the cooking, I arranged the food in the dining room, and they all joined the table, ready to eat. You're not eating? Ethan asked when I turned to leave. I've eaten earlier, at school. I lied. Oh, come on. You made all this delicious food. You should have a taste of it. Sit, please. I can't imagine cooking all these delicacies only to not eat a thing out of it. Come on, have some rice. Here, she said, pushing rice and tomato soup my way. Caden, pass the meatballs, please, she said, and the brothers smiled. I sat at the table, as they wanted, and began to eat, listening to them recalling old memories and laughing about it. They seemed really close. I bet they wouldn't share Eileen the way they shared me, but I was probably wrong. She was going to mate with them after all, so they were probably going to share her too, but she was legitimate. I was something else, a concubine, a mistress, a side chick. Sitting there at the table made me feel less of myself by the minute, and eventually I got to my feet halfway to the meal. I have this project. I haven't finished it yet, and we're to turn it in early tomorrow morning. Please excuse me, I said, pushing back my chair and arranging my plates on a tray. Oh, really? Want me to help you out? Caden asked. No, it's fine. You should reunite with Miss. Just Eileen. Please, don't make me feel awkward, she joked with a bright smile, and I nodded. I left the table immediately and made my way to my room. All through the evening, it was so hard to get the triplets alone. I went down the stairs every couple of minutes to check on them, but they were still busy. Finally, at night, I went into the kitchen to take some water. All four of them were nowhere to be found, so I guessed they were in the triplets' room. Just then, Eileen walked in, and I figured the triplets had to be alone. I gave a little smile to her and made to leave. A maid never sits at the table, eating with her masters. I hope you didn't burn your senses with all your fat. From what I hear, You were a little on the obese side, I suddenly heard her say, and stopped in shock. Had she been pretending to be nice? Yereen's pove. Did Eileen really say that? I turned, but before I could, she had brushed past me, hitting my shoulder hard. Steer clear, she said as she left, and I knew she meant I was to avoid both her and the brothers. How could I do that? Was she really going to mate with the brothers? How was I to live with her? Why didn't the triplets tell me anything about her? My fingers clenched into fists, and I walked out of the kitchen, storming up the stairs and moving past Eileen and Anna, who was a little shocked. I went to Ethan's bedroom and knocked, since I knew they all were most likely to be there playing games. Come in, came Reese's voice, and I pushed the door open. I walked in and they all stopped, just as I had thought they had been playing games. Is it true Eileen's mating with you three? I asked them immediately, as I didn't have time to stall and they went silent. Ethan turned off the games and got to his feet. Well, yes. And you didn't tell me? I cut in sharply. You should calm down, Caden said, also getting to his feet. How will I calm down? We were having sex without strings, Irene. Did you forget that? Reese asked, and I stopped in shock. Eileen's father has great wealth and influence. Our father wants us to mate with her to strengthen the pack. We've been talking about it for a while, but we made the conclusions today. I don't understand why you're mad, he explained, and I took steps back. I get it. It was indeed just sex, I pointed out, trying to control my rage and hurt. I'm sorry. Have a nice night, I said to them, and left, feeling tears pricking the back of my eyes. It had been just sex. I was the fool to attach something else to it. That was stupid of me. Fran had been right, and it hurt to admit that she was. She had said the triplets would still leave me, and they were about to. Why was I getting mad? Reese could actually ask me that. How would I not get mad when another girl was about to take my place? When they had demanded me day and night, and I had given them my all. Now, they had found someone to mate with, and I was someone who wasn't supposed to be mad? I was reminded it was just sex. Why, that was sick. In my room, I cried. I cried the whole night as I began to feel useless and unwanted, but when the morning came, I was ready to push it all past me. They were willing to take it as just sex. That would be fine by me. I wouldn't complain about any of it, and when I found my mate, they weren't going to be in a position to get mad. I got up early and cleaned the house quickly because I really didn't want to run into them, but it was impossible because Eileen called for me almost every time. She gave fake sweet smiles and complimented me at every turn. Can you catch it? She asked from a higher part of the staircase while I was below holding a large suitcase. I can just come and get it. I was saying, but she dropped it, and while trying to catch the expensive suitcase she had said wasn't to get a scratch, I twisted my ankle and fell down the stairs. Irene? Ethan called in shock, getting to his feet, while Eileen ran down the stairs quickly to get to me before any of the brothers could. Oh my, I didn't know you were this weak. I thought Omegas had to have at least some strength. Oh no, my suitcase. Irene, she called, softly, and her eyes shone with tears. You really couldn't catch that? You're not fat anymore. Stop acting like you're still fat, Reese said, and his words cut deep. You should have told me, Eileen said with her tears dropping as she cradled her suitcase to her chest. The least you could do is apologize, Irene, Caden said, sounding rational. Did no one see me falling from the stairs? I'm sorry, I said, and she shook her head. It's fine. I know now that you're a little weak. I'll be more careful. Weak, weak. Those words repeated over and over in my head. That afternoon, I served chicken fajita wraps for lunch, since the boys had said they wanted something light. But Eileen had something to say about it. You didn't even give me cutleries. I'm amazed, Irene. They're boys, so they can eat with their hands, but I think I'm worth giving cutleries. It's quite uncultured. Do you eat this with your hands, too? Look, sorry. Sorry if I said something wrong. I'm just not used to eating with my hands, she stated, looking at the boys for approval. I'm sorry. I apologized and went to get cutleries. Irene, I'm really sorry, but can you change the cup? There's a kind of stain here. Did you wash this? Yes, I did. It's totally fine. You and I can wash the dishes together after lunch so you can watch me wash, but for now I'll just wash everyone's cups. We can't use dirty cups, can we? She asked, taking the cups the triplets drank from. I'll be right back. Sit, Urine. Weak, uncultured. She had managed to stress those words. She had managed to make me sound weak and uncultured. Shortly, she returned with the cups, looking really bright. She poured water into everyone's cups and shared cutleries. Come on, boys. Only pigs are uncultured and mannerless, she said to them, but when she mentioned pigs, she looked at me. Oh, cutlery's missing for you, Urine. My bad. I'll get them, she said and left once more. And I couldn't help but notice she had skipped me out deliberately, just to stress that the boys needed cutleries, but I didn't. I didn't know Eileen was this great, Rhys muttered as he cut into his rap. And I knew it was the start of things going downhill. Marine's peau vive. It was already the weekend, and Eileen had shown me her true face whenever she got the chance to. In front of the triplets, she acted nice and lovely, making the triplets adore her. And in acting pleasant and lovely, she managed to paint me as the villain in her every word. It was getting unbearable. Rhys and Caden were starting to think I was the problem, and Ethan was silent, which meant he was probably believing Eileen too. Well, they would believe their childhood friend over a person they used only for sexual activities. And to be honest, if I were the triplets, I would believe her too, because she had a way of making her words seem like the truth. She would say it so casually that it was hard to think her words were planned. Every day, I could see the triplets start to really think I was the problem, and it was a little painful. What are you cooking for dinner? Rhys asked me that morning, even though he clearly saw me putting uncooked pasta into a pot of boiling water. You know what? Never mind, but hey, no nuts. Anything that has anything nutty inside it, don't put it in the food. Eileen is allergic to nuts. She'll cough her lungs out. I simply nodded and began to separate the ingredients that had anything to do with nuts. So, just cook. I'm starving, he said and looked around while tapping his fingers on the desk. I could tell easily that he wanted to talk to me, but was finding it hard. Then Eileen walked in. Hi, Urine. Ooh, the steak looks fresh. Oh, by the way, I wanted to tell you that I don't eat nuts. Anything nuts is a no for me. I don't eat them. So I'd like you to be meticulous when you're cooking. Do you think you can do that? Eileen asked, resting on the counter and staring at me with lovely doe eyes. Yes, sure. Rhys already told me about it, so I separated them already. I replied to her and moved on to washing the beef for steak. Then Caden and Ethan came in and I gave a silent sigh. Being around them was becoming impossibly hard, especially when Eileen was also present. The both of him went to the fridge and took out glasses. I'm particularly thirsty this morning, but upon seeing this fruit juice, I can't help but keep water aside, Caden said, taking out yellow orange juice I had hand-squeezed. I just can't wait for our mating ceremony. It's like, you guys didn't know, but I crushed on you for a long time, Eileen said, taking a tomato from my bowl of tomatoes. Seriously? On all three of us? Caden asked, pouring orange juice for himself. Yeah, I couldn't pick. There was this day in class, I think that was elementary school, I was asked who I would pick among the three of you. Boy, I was up in my head for minutes, trying to pick, but you know what I said in the end? What? Rhys asked, smiling. I said I wanted to marry all three of you. Insane, right? How that dream is coming true, she completed, and a bit into the tomato. Did none of you ever have a crush on me? Eileen asked, and Rhys and Caden exploded in laughter. What? Tell me, Eileen said, joining in the laughter. It's nothing, Caden said. Oh, come on, speak up, Eileen said, leaving the counter and going to them. Couldn't they have their conversations elsewhere? I was trying to concentrate. Oh my gosh, was it you, Ethan? Eileen suddenly asked in shock, and I stopped chopping the green onions on my chopping board for a moment. He wrote letters every day, but never sent them. Him acting like he disliked you was actually because he didn't want you to know he liked you. Caden explained, laughing. Are you for real? Have you forgotten, Caden? How he would stand in the mirror and say, Eileen, this is for you. Caden completed along with Rhys, and they laughed. That was a long time ago. Don't make it awkward, Ethan said, although I could tell he was smiling. So you mean he would practice giving me letters but never actually gave them to me? Eileen asked, in awe, and they all continued to laugh. Hearing them laugh made me feel sick. It made me wish I had been Eileen. I wished my mother had been rich and I had a father. I wished I had met the triplets at a young age and actually stood a chance of being their mate. But here I was, a maid who hadn't even known them for a year. A maid they only wanted for sex. What was the use of burning all my fat? I preferred burying myself in the background and being all alone. It felt like I had become slim and popular only for Eileen to come and steal my popularity. She wasn't even attending the school with us, but everyone already knew about her. They knew she was the triplets' childhood friends, and rumors were floating around saying she was going to mate with them. What they didn't know was that the rumor they were happily spreading was actually the truth. Some people who didn't like me had used that opportunity to gloat. I saw it in the way they scoffed when I walked past. Then I realized people hate, not really for a reason, but just because they want to. They said they hated me because I was fat and disgusting. I was no longer fat nor disgusting, yet they still hated me. When breakfast was ready, I served the table and turned to get serviettes for everyone from the kitchen. Then Eileen came from the kitchen with her own washed cup, and when she passed me, she suddenly threw herself forward, screamed, and crashed into the breakfast table. I was calling to see if she was fine, but she suddenly turned towards me with rage on her face. "Why would you trip me? Do you think I'm a joke? Why would you trip me?" "What?" I asked, and looked at the triplets, who were all focused on Eileen. Was she going to frame me that easily and go free? Yerin's Poviv. I became dumbfounded as I stared at all four of them. Then Eileen tried to stand but staggered, falling on the table and causing more harm to the dishes and jug of water. The brothers all got to their feet trying to help her, but she refused their help. "Why would you stick your leg out when I'm innocently passing by?" "Why did I stick my leg out? I was walking. There's no way I could have stuck my leg out." I defended myself, regaining my tongue quickly. "Wow, so you're going to be like this? Didn't think you were the type to lie." She spat, staring at me like I had really tripped her. I began to wonder if I had accidentally tripped her, but that was impossible. I didn't feel anything, tripping over my foot. She had pushed herself forward. "I'm not lying," I retorted, looking at the triplets, and they looked a little torn, like they didn't know whom to believe, although I was very sure they believed Eileen by 88%. "Oh yeah, you're not. I simply tripped myself and crashed into the table when we're all about to eat." "Nice theory, Yerin. Look, I didn't trip you. I was going to the kitchen to get some serviettes. I've been noticing this attitude she's giving me. I just didn't want to think of it too much." She lied, turning to the triplets and pointing viciously at me. "The first time we met, she stared at me like I wasn't worthy to mate with you guys." "I never did that," I cut in. "Of course she did. She's been glaring at me secretly and trying to hurt me on purpose. The incident with my suitcase wasn't accidental. She let it fall on purpose. I tell you, she let it fall." She shrieked and began to breathe heavily. "Eileen, keep calm. I will," Ethan was saying, but Eileen wasn't done. "The other day, my cup was the only one that seemed not to have been washed well. How could that possibly be a coincidence? She keeps on doing things like she hates me." She hit her chest continuously and her hands shook. How she had managed to pull off the fake fury, I couldn't begin to understand. "Now she tried to trip me. What is that supposed to imply?" Eileen asked, spreading her arm wide. Then she placed her hands on her cheeks, acting miserable. "I've been trying to get along with her because we're girls, but—" She sniffed and tears shone in her eyes. "Eileen," Reese called in a soft tone I had never heard him use. "If I did something wrong, please ask her to let me know. I'll apologize. If an apology is what she wants, it doesn't cost me a thing. I'll apologize." She continued and tucked her hair behind her ears, sniffing, and I couldn't help but feel like the villain as she continued to cry with the brothers crowded around her. The brothers had asked me to apologize, but I hadn't because I wasn't going to take the blame for something I didn't do. I wasn't going to be considered a bad person by the triplets, all because I gave in and apologized. Days passed and I became even more depressed. Eileen was always with the brothers and was always acting the part of the angel who was too thoughtful to be true. Another of Eileen's evil orchestrations that shook me really hard was the one she pulled off on a Saturday night when we were having dinner. I had made beef broth with rice, steamed vegetables, and salad, and because the triplets had asked, I had sat down with them at the table. Smells good. Eileen complimented as she spooned beef broth. She held it out to the brothers so the aroma could whiff past them, then she had taken it into her mouth. Tastes just as good as it smells. She complimented again, and everyone began to eat. Seconds later, her hands flew to her throat and she began to cough. "Hey, are you okay?" Ethan asked, pouring water into a jug for her, but she continued to cough hard. The brothers began to fuss over her, and I began to feel scared. It felt like she would cough her lungs out. The veins on her neck seemed ready to pop, and her eyes had already turned from white to red, with tears pouring out of it uncontrollably. Nuts. She coughed out, and the brothers all looked at me. "Damn it, Irene. Eileen's allergic to nuts," Ethan shouted, and almost immediately my eyes watered up. Ethan had never raised his voice on me. They all continued to help Eileen, who seemed like she was really going to die. I couldn't even begin to deny putting nuts into the food, as it didn't seem to be the right time for that. Ethan's Poe. After putting Eileen to sleep and making sure she was fine, we all went down the stairs to meet Irene in the living room. Ever since we had reminded Irene that we had been having sex without strings, the horrible drama had started. Oh, I didn't even know who or what to believe. Every situation and circumstance pointed to Irene, but each time she denied it. And it wasn't just me. Caden and Reese were also confused. The occurrence of the night just made it all the more hard to believe Irene, because there was no way Eileen would ever put nuts in her own food. "Irene, I didn't do it," she claimed, even before I had completed my sentence. "Why do you keep saying you didn't do it? Do you know how many times I've been hearing you say this for like the past 2 weeks?" Reese snapped, but she shook her head even harder. "I didn't. I know she's allergic to nuts, so why would I? Believe me, please," she pleaded, and I and Caden exchanged looks. We were seriously torn between Irene and Eileen. Who were we to believe? Irene's Poe V. I needed them to believe me. Why would I put nuts into Eileen's food when I knew she was allergic to it? It was Eileen that could do such, and I knew she had done it so she could succeed in her mission of turning the brothers against me. They came down from the stairs with an expression I couldn't comprehend. I had to defend myself. Before Ethan could say another word after calling my name, I had told them the truth. I didn't do it. I needed them to believe me, but of course they didn't. "Why do you keep saying you didn't do it?" Reese snapped, and I knew it was the start of me being painted as the villain. "Do you know how many times I've been hearing you say this for like the past 2 weeks?" He continued, and I shook my head vigorously. "I didn't," I told them desperately. "I know she's allergic to nuts, so why would I? Believe me, please." "Yes, you know she's allergic to nuts, and that's why you put it into her food," Caden said, with a sigh. "No, I didn't. I really didn't," I denied. "Look, you should stop, Irene. We'll talk tomorrow," Ethan said, turning away after giving me a disappointed look. A look that shattered me. Why didn't they trust me? I mean, Eileen's plan was perfect, but didn't they know me well enough to know that I couldn't do such a thing? Reese and Caden gave me similar looks of disappointment before turning away and following Ethan. I swallowed hard. I watched them with tears pricking the back of my eyes, but what more could I do? The next morning, I was called down to the living room. The brothers were there, seated on a sofa, and Eileen was on another, opposite them, with her arms folded. She was a devil. How could she frame someone without any feelings of remorse? "You called for me?" I asked with my hands behind me, and Eileen's head whipped towards me. "The triplets might have spoken to you, cautioned you, or warned you, but that is not enough for me. How would you deliberately put nuts into my food when you know I'm allergic to it?" "I didn't put nuts in your food. You cooked the food, you dished out the food, and you served the food. Or are you trying to say I deliberately put myself in danger? For what? Why would I risk that?" she asked, losing her arms and straightening up. "I didn't do it," I said, and unfortunately my voice broke. "Irene, just apologize." Ethan said, giving me a stern look. "I can't apologize. I did nothing wrong. The last time you tripped me, you said the same thing. You said you didn't do it and that you couldn't apologize. Now you're pulling the same card. I won't take it. You will render an apology." "But," I tried to protest. "No, "This won't do. I'm calling my father," she said, getting to her feet and taking out her phone. "Come on, Eileen," Reese said, going towards her. "Urine, apologize now," Ethan growled through gritted teeth, and the look on his face was one of complete seriousness. If I didn't apologize, there was no telling as to what would happen. My eyes watered, but I blinked the tears away. I'm sorry," I said, even though the words burned through my lips. "Damn you!" she shrieked and left the living room. Things went on like that for a long time. Eileen messed things up and blamed me. Once I saw her fiddling with a portrait, and when she saw me, she had smiled. The next time I passed by the portrait, I didn't know how she managed it, but it fell and shattered into pieces. She messed up the kitchen, knowing they would automatically think it was my doing. She hid things in my apron and in the things I wore, so they were found on me, and each time the brothers believed her. For weeks, I was living in hell, and my sweet paradise with the brothers had suddenly ended. The most annoying part of it all was how she gloated about it when we were all alone. She never admitted she was behind it all, but she gloated about the brothers pushing me aside. She even spread rumors to the school, saying my jealousy was on another level, and I was causing her any headache. It was anonymous, and she claimed to be a friend who visited the triplets. The news caught fire, and I was greatly ridiculed in school. They said mean things like my time had ended. Even shredding off my layers of fat couldn't help catch the eye of the triplets. I had dreamt too much. All their words cut me deeply. Then finally, I reached my limit on one faithful day when I was to give the brothers lunch in the pack house because they had been there all morning. I had dressed up, happy to be free from Eileen, happy to leave the house to a place apart from school. When I got to the pack house, I asked the servants I saw there for the triplets' whereabouts, and they directed me. When I got there, the door was slightly open, and I was about to knock when I heard Ethan speaking. "Yes, Mr. God. She is the one, Urine. That wolf that is nothing but a useless Omega?" I heard the alpha spit out with such spite that made my body heat up in shame. But I waited. I didn't know why I waited, but after a minute I realized what I had been waiting for. I had been waiting for the triplets to defend me. But they hadn't. And words were unable to describe the feeling of hurt I had felt. I was useless, except when I was being used for their pleasure. To my surprise, my feet turned and I began to walk briskly away from the room. I couldn't bear to look at the triplets in the eye anymore. My time with them had long passed. When I left the pack house, there was only one thing on my mind. I was leaving the triplets, and I was never coming back. Reen's Poe. I walked across the streets, blinded by my tears as my feet found their way back to the house. My tears fell down my cheeks, but I didn't care to wipe them off, nor did I care about the people staring at me, and wondering why a grown lady like me was crying on the streets shamelessly. When I got to the house, Eileen was recording herself with a camera. She was patting her face on which a face mask stuck to. "So we have to keep this on for as long as an hour," she was saying, and as I dashed past, she turned to look at me, but didn't say a word. I had had enough. It had all been too much for me. I should have left immediately. I had been able to pay the triplets back for the artifact I had broken, but I was blinded by the love I had for them and the exciting things they offered. I didn't care about the sex contract. My mother's health was stable, and I would take as many part-time jobs as I could to pay for the drugs she needed. All I wanted at that moment was never to see them again. I took a large bag, went to my wardrobe, and started stuffing clothes into it. Then I went to my desk, and with a single sweep of my hand, brushed everything on it into the bag. A few books and pens made it into my bag along with a pair of shoes. There were a lot I would have loved to take, but I wouldn't be able to leave if the triplets found me trying to leave. They would want to use the penalties for breaking the contract against me, and I didn't have what it took to pay the penalties. After zipping up the bag, I threw it down the window of my room, wiped my tears, and went down the stairs. "Have you given the triplets lunch?" Eileen asked, and her question angered me a lot, but I tried my best to answer her. After all, it would be the last time I had to answer her. Yes. I lied and walked past her. She wanted to say something more, give an order, but I wasn't up for it. I had no time to waste at the moment. Once I was outside the house, I went to my room window and took my bag before running out of the building. I hailed a cab and told him the farthest location from the street. We drove for almost an hour, and when he dropped me, I was on a deserted street with hardly any people around. On the other side was the woods, and after looking around for a while, I decided to take the path of the forest. I wanted to go so far that the triplets wouldn't be able to find me even if they searched. My only hope was that the woods I was about to enter didn't connect to the woods a few blocks away from the school, because if it somehow connected, there was a possibility they could still find me. But was I that important? That important that they would search for me? I didn't think so. They had no opposition to me being called useless, so why would they search for something useless? The leaves underneath me crunched as I crushed them underfoot. If I had still been fat, it would have been hard for me. I would have been tired already. It turned out losing weight was not in vain after all. I walked for quite a long time and was fueled by the determination burning hard in me, but when it became dark, I began to get the chills. My head whipped around every 3 seconds, and my eyes were everywhere. The flashlight on my phone was close to useless in the dark forest. The forest was just too big and my light too small. I kept on looking all around and walking carefully. Every little sound scared me. Even the trees swaying to the breeze were scary. What made it particularly scary was that some of them swayed to the breeze, while others seemed perfectly still. It made it feel like I was surrounded by wicked elders, and some of them were rejoicing that I was fresh meat while others were tighter and stricter, keeping the fact that they were pleased to themselves. Then I began to feel really scared and lost. Where was I going? I had no particular destination in mind. I had never been to that part of the woods before. The place was totally unknown to me. I didn't know what went on in the forest, nor did I know the things that had happened. I began to wish it were a dream, and that I had thought better about the direction I was going. The trees in the forest only got thicker, and the ground steeper. Was it going to lead to a way out, or it only went deeper into the forest? Then I began to have the uneasy feeling that something was watching me. As the realization hit me, my heart began to feel light. My steps were too loud, and even my breathing began to seem noisy to me. Everything I did seemed to be really noisy in the silent forest. If something happened to jump out at me, where was I going to run to? I had nowhere to go. Would anyone find me, or would they find my corpse? The bushes behind me shook, and I nearly fell to the ground. I wanted to walk faster, but my legs were too shaky for me to control them to move faster. My breathing came out really sharp, fast, and noisy. Please, please. The bushes to my right shook like something went past them, and I jumped. It was following me. Something was following me. I began to run, shouting and crying out of fear. I knew it was stupid of me to shout, but I couldn't help myself. I threw away my bag, and a few more seconds into the race, I threw my phone, screaming. Branches hit my face as I ran, and thorns wrapped around my ankles, causing me to stagger and fall. I was running like a crazy man who had escaped from the hospital, and just then, in front of me, was the silhouette of a man. A scream escaped me, and I fell to the floor. It had caught up with me. Whatever it was, it had caught up with me. Yireen's Povee. My heart was beating too fast, and it felt like I was going to explode. Apart from the light of the moon, there was no other source of light. Then I screamed. I screamed as loud as I could, hoping someone would hear me and magically come to my rescue in the next second. My eyes were tightly closed, and my hands were over my ears, trying not to see, hear, or feel anything. But it was hard. I heard feet rushing, and I sat there on the floor with my body shaking visibly. "Are you okay?" A rather soft voice asked me. A gentle hand alighted on my shoulder, and I looked up. It was a man. When he saw my face, he stopped, and the look in his eyes went soft. He had smooth red hair that fell over his face on his right. His eyes were a warm brown, and his lips were heart-shaped. He looked like he had jumped out from a book. "Are you okay?" he asked after snapping himself back to reality, and I blinked. Yes. "Why did you scream?" he asked, and I looked back. It felt like something was watching me, following me. If there was, I'd have sensed it immediately, as this is my forest. I am led to believe, however, that you were petrified, and your brain made you see, hear, and feel things that weren't there," he explained, and I looked down at my shaking hands. "Oh, forgive my manners. I'm Theo, and you are?" "Urine." "Urine," he called softly, with a thoughtful look on his face. "Well, Urine, you should come with me. Even if there is nothing out here at the moment, it is still quite dangerous at other times," he explained, and I lifted myself from the floor. It was just what I needed. A new place. New people. "Alpha Theo, do you want us to return now?" a man asked as we drew closer, and my eyebrows shot high up on my face. "Alpha?" I must have stumbled onto the neighboring pack. "Yes, we can." We walked away from the forest, and eventually we came onto another deserted street where a car was waiting. And unbelievably, immediately I got into the car and settled down. My eyes began to close. The triplets must have known I was gone already. They must have been wondering where I was and what had happened to me. I guess I slept because I had been exhausted. After all, I had walked for almost half the hours of the day. When I woke, I was laying on something soft, and the air around me smelled like candy. I wasn't in my room, so where was I? My eyes flew open, and I sat up in a bolt. I was in a large room, on a bed that was meant for 4 people. The whole place was draped in pink. The walls, curtains, desk and chair, the bed frame, its covers, the wardrobe, the bathroom door, everything had been coated in soft baby pink, and it was beautiful. It made it seem like I had awoken in paradise. Shortly after I woke up, a knock sounded on the door, and my head whipped towards it. 2 ladies dressed in maid uniforms walked in with a tray in each of their hands. "Good morning, Miss Urine." "Miss, what was going on?" They opened the covers and I was stunned as my eyes were greeted with delicacies on plates. They had almost everything in those trays. "What would you like to eat?" Anything, I replied. I wanted to see the Alpha. Did he know me before? Why were his maids treating me like the wife of the president? Just as if he were reading my mind, the door opened and he walked in. If anything, he looked even more handsome in the day. "You're up?" he asked with a smile, and I nodded. The maids excused us, and I looked around at my surroundings once more. Thank you. You don't know me, yet you treated me with so much respect, Alpha Theo." "Oh, no. Call me Theo. After all, I introduced myself to you as Theo, and not as Alpha Theo," he said, and I bit my lips. "Thank you so much, Theo." "Can you tell me what you were doing in the forest that late at night? Were you strolling?" "No, I was saying, but suddenly recalled my bag and my phone. My hands threaded into my hair, and I sighed. "What's the matter?" he asked. No, it's nothing," I answered, dropping my hands immediately. "Do you like the room? I figured girls love pink, so I had the room draped in pink. Do you happen to have a seer here?" I asked. "No." "Why do you ask?" "I'm curious. How did you know I was coming?" I asked, confused, and he laughed. "I didn't know." "Then how... Did you set this up at night, or you have rooms like this?" "Well, when you employ 20 servants to dress a room in pink, they finish faster than you'd expect," he explained, and my jaw fell. "You could have just given me a regular room. You didn't need to go through all that," I said, playing with my fingers. "Yes, I did, because when I first saw you, it felt like I had been struck by lightning," he began, and my heart shook. Was he trying to profess love to me? "I fell for you the moment our eyes locked, and I couldn't just leave you," he continued. "It was the first time, my very first time of someone confessing their feelings to me. Even Braden's confession had not felt as sincere as Theo's. I know what I want when I see it, Urine, and what I want is you. I would do anything for you to stay by my side. It was indeed my first time experiencing such, so I would want to mark you as mine." "What? A mating ceremony?" "Urine's povie." I was taken aback by Theo's words. He wanted to mate with someone he had met just hours ago? He didn't know anything about me, nor did he know who I was, yet he wanted to mate with me just because he was smitten? Is that going to be a problem?" he asked, leaning forward so he could see my face properly. Yes, it will be," I answered honestly. He might be fine with mating with a total stranger, but I wasn't. The whole idea just seemed weird and off. Besides, I wasn't ready to let anyone into my heart or mate with someone I didn't love. His face fell, and he looked a little disappointed. He had probably never been turned down before. Let's say a part of me knew it wouldn't work out as easily as I wanted, but the other part wanted to keep hoping. I'm sorry if I caused you inconvenience, but can I ask your reasons? He asked, looking at me gently, like he was trying to let me know he wasn't forcing me to speak. I can't mate with a man I just met, and also I'm... Honesty was probably the best policy to go by at that moment. If I told him I wasn't interested in mating with him, he might not want me anymore, but I was fine with that. If he kicked me out, it would be okay, as long as it wasn't back into the forest. Because I didn't want to give anyone false hopes, nor did I wish to get myself in another mess. I was just crawling out of one, and the effects were yet to wear out on me. Feel free, he urged. I'm not interested in mating with anyone presently, I said, and there was silence for a while. Then, reluctantly, I looked up at him. I really hoped he understood. Would it be fine if I made you interested then? He asked, and I was a little taken aback. I had expected him to feel a little down, but instead, there seemed to be a kind of fire in his eyes. If you made me interested? I asked, and he nodded. I don't know if you intend on leaving, but I'd love it if you stayed for at least a few weeks before moving on to wherever you're going. I can do that, I said, jumping at the opportunity. It was shameless of me since I wasn't willing to appreciate him by giving him what he wanted, but I really needed it. Great, he said with a bright smile. I would like to attempt the challenge. Before you leave, I would like to try my best to make you interested, only if you'll let me. He offered, looking like he really didn't want to be denied that in the very least. That's fine by me, I said, returning his smile, and I couldn't help but feel a little satisfied at the triumphant smile on his face. There was just something satisfying about his smile. I've been searching for my mate for a very long time, and although my wolf hasn't said anything about you, I want my mate to be you. He told me with sincerity, and my eyes fell to my hands. We'll see, I replied, still looking at my hands, and he tucked my hair behind my ear. Just that simple gesture sent bolts racing to my heart. I hadn't realized that a little gesture such as someone tucking your hair back could actually move the heart. No one, not even the brothers, had actually done that simple gesture for me. At last I stumbled on something beautiful, he remarked, in a low, distracted tone, and my cheeks flushed. Here, he said, reaching out to one of the trays of food and placing them on my lap. You should eat, then come with me to get you clothes and probably a phone too, he added, getting to his feet, and I watched him as he left the room. I didn't mind staying with him for months, not because he seemed to like me, but because I would appreciate it a lot if the triplets never found me. He seemed gentle and more understanding than the triplets. With time, I could actually be able to tell him what had really taken me to him. I looked back at the food and sighed. Was it just the joy of being somewhere safe, or what the triplets' father had said that made me have no appetite? Staring at the curry alone made me feel nauseous. Cadence Pove. Irene had not come with our lunch, but that had been fine because Dad had complained so much about Irene that afternoon that we were scared she would accidentally overhear him. When we got home later that night, we met Eileen making a video of her cooking. Where's Irene? Why are you doing the cooking yourself? Reese had asked. I don't know. She's not in, she replied. All right, so now I'm going to place the beef in. We had left Eileen and went to the living room to relax. Irene's not in. Where could she be? I asked, picking up the remote controller. At her mum's. Her mum's really improving, so I guess she can talk for hours now. Ethan replied, taking up a glass of water that had been on the table. Her number isn't available, Reese said, tossing his phone on the chair. She'll be home tomorrow. I think I'm going to get some sleep, Ethan said, and had left. I'll go too. I chipped in, dropping the remote controller on the sofa, and left Reese in the living room. However, the next day, early in the morning, Reese suddenly burst into my room. Caden, he called. What? Damn, can't you see I'm sleeping? Irene's missing. Her room is a mess, and at the facility where her mom stays, they said they haven't seen her in days. Reese informed me frantically, and I sat up immediately. Irene was missing? Cadence Povee. I got out of bed immediately and searched for a coat to wear while Reese went to alert Ethan to what had happened. Irene couldn't be missing. Where could she have gone? In minutes, all three of us were outside, debating on where to search for her. "I'll check the school," Ethan offered. "I'll check the places she used to work for her part-time jobs," I added. "I'll check her old home, the gym, and around the neighborhood." Reese also added, "Remember, no one is to know she's missing." Ethan reminded us, taking out his phone from his pockets. "You don't think she actually came with lunch and overheard what Father said?" Reese asked, and we stopped. That was very true. "You know what? I'll ask the maids in the pack house first. Let's go," Reese suggested, and we split up in different directions to begin the search for Urine. After about 20 minutes of searching, I received a call from Reese. "Damn. She came. The maid said she left rushing without delivering the food." Reese informed me, and I kicked a stone on the floor. Urine had been having things hard lately. If she happened to hear Father saying all those mean things, of course, it would be too much. I began to feel really guilty at that moment. What if she had been telling the truth, and all those incidents weren't caused by her? From our younger days, I recalled Eileen being the smart and crafty type, but there was no way Eileen would plan all those things, right? Call Ethan. Let him know Urine ran away, Urine's povie. I forced myself to eat the food in front of me, and the result was puking. "I feel unwell," I said to myself, as I placed my head underneath the tap. Of course, my being unwell definitely had a lot to do with the triplets. When I was done puking and washing my face, I left my room and walked into the halls. I was taken aback by the beauty of the place. Beautiful, intriguing art portraits on the floor, portraits of alphas that had once led the pack, a wall decorated with roses and thorns. The staircase alone was a spiral beauty. It seemed to be made of glass, for it was sparkling and transparent. All around me was beauty. There were so many rooms, and I guessed it had to be a mansion. Nothing but a mansion. "Miss Urine?" a lady called, and I turned to her. "Alpha Theo asked me to lead you to him if I saw you wandering around. Wasn't it?" she said in a friendly tone, and I smiled. "Thank you." There was a huge garden filled with all kinds of flowers, and amidst the flowers was Theo, who lay on the grass, resting. "Alpha Theo," the lady called, and Theo opened his eyes. He looked up at me and sat up immediately. "Thank you, Tina," he said, and got up from the ground. Tina turned around and left us alone. "Do you want to get clothes now?" he asked, and I looked at my clothes. "They're a bit dirty, so I guess." Damn, take a look at old me. I should have ordered something first. You can't go to the boutique like this. He lamented, then took out his phone and dialed a number. "Sarah, I need you to get me a dress for the lady I brought with me last night." "Yes, and get a new phone too while you're at it," he said, and I held my hands together. Receiving a lot from someone and not being able to return it was a little pressurizing. Shortly, a pretty peach dress was gotten for me along with a new phone, and I and Theo set the phone up together. I got to realize he was a hilarious man and used his jokes to break the ice. After the dress and the phone, we went to a boutique and did a lot of shopping. Theo picked almost everything. Every single design seemed to catch his eye, and he couldn't resist buying them, which made me laugh. He'd say, "Urine, wah! Check this out, it has stones at the collar. Someone else would wear this if we don't take it. Come on, drop it in the cart." He said that every time until we had close to 18 shopping bags. They filled the car, and we decided to walk while waiting for the car to drop the clothes at home, then return to get us. Theo got us ice cream, and we ate in a restaurant while he told me about his bad history with girls. In half a day, Theo and I were free with each other. He was also very caring. He drew up my chair for me when I sat and kicked pebbles out of my way when I walked, so I wouldn't fall. We took pictures, and he got us matching caps to place on our heads. When I had burned my mouth from placing hot tomato soup into it, he had hastily poured water into a cup for me. When vegetables had managed to get stuck on my cheek, he had taken it off gently with a napkin. Countless times he made me blush, but for all the delicious food I ate, I ended up throwing up hours later. Theo seemed to notice I wasn't feeling well and offered to take me to the hospital in case I had fallen ill due to my shock in the forest. He also asked if I had been going through stress lately, and I nodded. Thoughts of Eileen alone were stressful, and the fact that the brothers seemed to believe her over me was very depressing. All that had probably combined to make me sick. A while later, Theo and I watched the doctor walking towards us with the test results, and he was smiling as he did so. "I guess there's nothing wrong with you then," Theo muttered, and I smiled. "Robert, what does it say?" he asked as the doctor came closer. "I'm offended, Alpha Theo. You didn't tell me anything about a woman," Robert said, and Theo chuckled. "Oh, come on. Congratulations, she is 3 weeks pregnant." At his last words, I began to choke horribly. Pregnant? Urine's pov. It was so hard to keep my smile up, and even as Theo and I went home in his car, I was still dumbfounded. How could I be pregnant? Being pregnant meant I would never be free from the triplets. Besides, I felt too young to be carrying a baby for them. It meant I had to put my life on hold for a while. School would have to stop, although I had given up on schooling the moment I ran away. It was just so hard to believe. I was really pregnant. I was carrying a baby in me, a life. Wow, that was just so unbelievable. I could not see myself as a mother no matter how I tried. At that moment, I was even more thankful to Theo for giving me the time I needed to process that information. He hadn't asked any questions. Rather, he had led Robert away so he could explain the situation to him. When we got back home, Theo led me to my room and I sat on my bed. I'm sorry," I said, staring into space, although I didn't understand why I was apologizing. "What are you apologizing for?" he asked, sitting on the bed with me. "I don't know," I replied in an almost whisper as I continued to turn into space, and then my tears began to fall. Slowly they fell, but they didn't stop. They were continuous tears filling up before the last one fell. "You don't have to say anything if you don't want to. You can just rest. My mother has been in the hospital for a long time. My father, I never met. Money was hard to come by, so I started working for the Alpha's sons. Triplets. They're the ones fathering my baby. Although it was something we all did willingly. I wasn't forced. Then things went wrong." I stopped staring into space and looked down at my fingers, which were shaking as they tangled with each other. My tears fell faster, and it was so hard to continue. A childhood friend came along who was to mate with them, and she painted me black. She orchestrated incidents to make me the bad guy. She even endangered herself just to turn their backs on me, and she succeeded. So when it all got too much, I ran away, and that's when you saw me," I explained, fiddling with the hem of my dress. Now I'm pregnant, and I don't know what to do." My voice wobbled dangerously, and I began to cry. Then Theo pulled me to him and hugged me. "It doesn't matter. They don't even know what they've done. They think I'm useless." I cried out. "Then they lost because you're just what I've been looking for. I'm not concerned with your past, and I won't resent you for it. If you'll let me, Irini, I will make you and your baby my responsibility. It doesn't cost me a thing, and I wouldn't mind having people to care for. You wouldn't have anything to worry about." Theo promised, holding me even tighter, and I began to cry out loud. Not because I was touched by his promises. Yeah, I was, but I was in love with the triplets. Raising the child with them was something I wanted. But I wasn't worth it. True to his word, Theo didn't mind where my baby came from. He pampered me all the same. He assigned the best healthcare specialists to watch me and care for me at any slight warning sign. We got massages from spas daily. He took to cinemas, and each day felt like a bliss. He made promises to me every day about how he'd stay with me and my baby forever, and those promises warmed my heart each time he said them. Theo cared for me deeply and showed it everywhere and every time. He made me comfortable, and being pregnant didn't feel like a big deal when I was with him. He made me feel excited about a baby coming, and it was unbelievable how he achieved his goal of making me feel better, easily. But there was still a problem, and every day I pondered on it. I had someone perfect, so why couldn't I get the triplets out of my mind? Why was it so hard to stop thinking of them and loving them? They were far from perfect when compared to Theo, so why did my heart keep going after them? Eileen's Poviv. It had been about 2 weeks since Irene had suddenly disappeared from the face of the earth, and it was when she disappeared that I finally knew where I truly stood with the triplets. They worried about her night and day and continued searching for her even though they knew she had gone willingly. I tried to get closer to them, but it seemed like they didn't have the time to talk to me. They always said stuff like, "Later, Eileen. I don't really feel like talking right now." I'm a little cranky. Thanks. I'm fine. I appreciate your efforts. If you don't mind, I need to sleep. They pushed me away at every turn and never let me in close to them. You should try to forget about her. People will always leave. Just imagine all she did before she left. I'm pretty sure she'd have tried to kill me if we gave her the chance to. I said one morning while blending smoothies for them. How could she just disappear? We've searched every damn place. So, where the heck is she? Caden asked, hitting the table. They hadn't even been listening to me. They were thinking about her again. You don't think she's dead, do you? Reese asked, and Ethan and Caden shot him dirty looks. She couldn't have flown out of the country, could she? Caden asked. She doesn't have the money, Ethan replied. Just stop worrying about her. I shrieked, and they all looked at me, and the look on their faces, like I was something disgusting. Eileen's POV. I took my eyes off and concentrated on the smoothie I was making. Are you not even in the least concerned? Ethan asked, staring at me like I had said something really wrong. She went missing, and all you can tell us to do is to forget about it. What if something happened to her? What if people ask of her and we can't provide information on her whereabouts? Reese asked, getting up from his seat. Why are you getting mad? I'm only trying to look out for you all. I defended myself, but as Reese left the table, Ethan and Caden followed. I'm just being worried, I said after them, but they didn't reply. Are you leaving the smoothie behind? Hey! I ran a hand through my hair and sighed. Would I ever get their attention? It made me wonder how things would have been if Urine had never left. I shone through her by making her the bad guy, while I stood out as an angel, but without her, the brothers were not even in the least interested in me. Damn it, I muttered to myself and turned off the blender. I was no longer in the mood for smoothies. I climbed the stairs and walked into my room. There had to be something else I could do. What could I do to grab their attention besides finding Urine? Because, truthfully, even though Urine made me shine in front of the brothers, I didn't think I really wanted her to be found. The way they behaved, it felt like they were in love with her, and if they saw her, they'd probably do something as stupid as confessing their love for her. They wouldn't do that, right? Then, the best solution was just for Urine never to be found. The brothers were strong. They would get over her. They only needed time. Urine's POV. I thought about the brothers occasionally, and Theo also asked me about them a few times. When he did, and I relayed stories of us to him, I tried to hide my feelings because even thinking of the happy moments with the triplets made my heart flutter. I could recall going to Halloween night with Caden. Walking in had been my most heart-fluttering moment. Recalling the New Year with Reese had been magical. That was Paris, and we had ran hand in hand, flying our kite with its pretty lights against the dark blue sky. And there had been the cinema, and the park with Ethan on Valentine. My time with the triplets had been fun, but the best remained us making out. Trying not to let my love for the triplets show whenever I talked about them was hard, and I hoped Theo didn't see through me because he had tried for me, and I didn't want to break him. He had also tried his best to win me over. If only he had met me when my heart was still mine, then I'd have given it to him willingly. To Theo and my disappointment, however, our paradise was not meant to last. Although it wasn't really a disappointment on my part since it was what I wanted, but to Theo it was probably one. It was a full moon when I went into heat. It was quite unbearable, and I kept on thinking of the triplets. Flashes of our nights together, on the bed having pleasure to the fullest, raced through my head. My body ached for someone to touch me, and I tried not to get overwhelmed by it. Theo could sense that I was in heat, of course, because he was a male, and I was embarrassed. The triplets buzzed in and out of my head, and my mind made up images of me stripping down with Theo to satisfy my wolf. Those images made me really embarrassed, and Theo knew what I was going through. "Follow me," he suddenly said, holding out his hand, and I saw he looked like he was fighting hard not to mate with me. I was at my most vulnerable moment, and it would be easy to take advantage of it, but he didn't. He took me to a treehouse that he made, about 3 buildings away from his mansion. "You can have all you want there. I'll assign some maids to serve you," he said, but I shook my head. I used to be a maid. I can take care of myself. I assured him, and he looked at me with a sigh before nodding and leaving. I stared long and hard at the moon, trying to ignore the overwhelming feelings of wanting to make out with someone, and a few minutes close to midnight, the door suddenly burst open. My head whipped around in shock, and I saw the triplets standing there. What were they doing there? How had they found me? Before I could get a word out, however, Ethan had made his way to me and kissed me passionately. Caden and Reese also made their way together, and there was no time to ask questions as I was busy trying to cast out all the sexual frustrations I was having. They were exactly what I needed at the moment. Although it was still so hard to believe they were with me, their hands roaming my body made me accept that it was real. In seconds I was stripped, and my clothes were lying on the floor. I was taken to the bed, and everything passed by in a blur. Even as we rubbed against each other, I found it quite hard to believe. How had they found me? My desire and pleasure tangled with my curiosity and questions. We made love for hours, and no questions were asked. And finally, after our desires had been fulfilled and our bodies exhausted, I recalled that I ought to be pissed at them. They hadn't defended me when their father had said all those mean things. I got off the bed and tugged on my clothes, still breathing heavily, and all three of them stared at me. It was finally the time to have a long discussion that would define just what we intended for our future together.